My sister called Child Protective Services on me on a Tuesday morning in April. She did it from my own driveway. I watched her do it through the kitchen window, her phone pressed to her ear, her back to the house, standing beside her car with the specific stillness of someone delivering prepared information to a prepared listener. I did not know yet what she was reporting. I did not know yet that she had been planning it. What I knew was that my sister had driven 40 minutes to have coffee with me that morning and was now standing in my driveway on the phone before she had come inside, and that the particular quality of her stillness was not the stillness of someone making a casual call. 31 days later, a family court judge removed her 2 children from her home and placed them in emergency foster care pending a full custody investigation. She had not seen that coming. Neither had I. Welcome back to BetrayalLedger Stories, where family secrets never stay buried for long. If this is your first time here, hit subscribe and join the family, because this story is one of the wildest ones we've ever told. Let's get into it. My name is Caroline Mercer. I am 34 years old. And the morning my sister called Child Protective Services on me from my own driveway, she had no idea that the caseworker who would be assigned to my file had already been assigned to hers. Stay with me, because this one is going to leave you completely speechless. I need you to understand what was at stake before I tell you how any of this happened. Because this story is not about paperwork or legal process or the administrative mechanics of a family court system. It is about 2 children, mine and hers. And what happens when someone mistakes a bureaucratic weapon for a solution to a problem that was never about the children at all. My daughter Haley was 4 years old in April of that year. She was the specific, complete joy of my life in the way that children are when you have wanted them for a long time and arrived at them through difficulty, through 2 years of fertility treatments and 1 miscarriage, and the particular, sustained grief of wanting something that keeps not arriving before it finally does. Haley had her father's eyes and my stubbornness and a laugh that started somewhere deep in her chest and arrived in the room before anything else about her did. She was healthy, thriving, enrolled in a preschool program that she loved with the uncomplicated enthusiasm of a child who has been made to feel that the world is a place that was arranged for her benefit. Her father, my husband Marcus, was a contractor in Knoxville, Tennessee, where we lived in a house we had bought 4 years earlier in a neighborhood with good schools and a park 2 blocks away and neighbors who waved when you passed. We had a good life in the specific, unflashy way of people who have built something real and know it and do not need to announce it. Marcus worked hard. I worked part-time as a graphic designer from a home office while Haley was in preschool, and the arrangement suited us and suited her, and had been producing a child who was, by every measure available to me, exactly as well as a 4-year-old child can be. My sister Jennifer was 37, 3 years older than me, living in Chattanooga with her husband Paul and their 2 children, a boy named Tyler who was 8 and a girl named Mia who was 6. Jennifer and Paul had been together for 12 years and married for 9, and the marriage had been, from the outside, the kind of marriage that looks like exactly what a marriage is supposed to look like and that I had understood. From the inside access that comes from being a sister was more complicated than its appearance suggested. Paul drank. Not in the visible, obvious way that announces itself at family gatherings, but in the quiet, consistent, behind closed doors way that Jennifer had been managing and minimizing and explaining away for years, and that I had watched her manage and minimize and explain away with the helpless frustration of someone who can see a thing clearly but cannot make the person inside it see it the same way. Jennifer and I had been close. I want to say that because it matters. Not in the distant, obligatory way of siblings who share parents and a childhood and nothing else, but genuinely close, the kind of close that comes from choosing each other repeatedly over years. From phone calls that went long and visits that were easy and the specific, irreplaceable comfort of someone who has known you long enough to know the difference between what you are saying and what you mean. What had happened to that closeness is the story I am trying to tell you. And like most stories of closeness that become something else, it did not happen in a single moment, but in an accumulation of moments that each seemed small until I looked at them all together. 6 months before the driveway call, Jennifer had asked me for money. Not a large amount. $300 to cover a gap in their mortgage payment that month because Paul's work had been slow and the timing was difficult. I had given it without hesitation and without attaching conditions because she was my sister and $300 was not a hardship for us, and attaching conditions to money given to family was not something I believed in. She had paid it back 6 weeks later, and we had not discussed it further. For months before the driveway call, she had asked again. This time the amount was $800 and the explanation was a car repair that could not wait. I had given it. She had not paid it back. I had not asked. 2 months before the driveway call, the amount was $2,000. This time the explanation was more vague, something about an unexpected bill and a difficult month and Paul's situation, and I had said yes more slowly than the previous times, but I had said yes because I loved her and because I believed the difficulty was real. The $2,000 left my account and did not come back. 1 month before the driveway call, she asked for $5,000. I said I needed to think about it. She said she needed an answer this week. I said I would call her by Friday. I talked to Marcus that evening. He listened to the history I laid out for him, the 300, the 800, the 2,000, the pattern of amounts increasing and return decreasing, and he said what he always said when I was navigating something with Jennifer, which was that it was my decision, and he would support whatever I decided, and that he thought I should do what felt right rather than what felt obligated. That was Marcus. He never told me what to do about my family. He just made sure I knew he was there regardless of what I decided. I called Jennifer on Thursday and told her I could not do the $5,000. I said I was concerned about the pattern of the requests and that I thought the underlying situation needed to be addressed rather than covered, and that I was happy to talk about what was actually happening with Paul and what she might need that money was not going to solve. I said it as carefully as I knew how to say it, which was carefully, because I had been thinking about how to say it for 48 hours. Jennifer said she was not asking for my analysis of her marriage. I said I understood that. She said she just needed the money. I said I was not going to give it this time. The call ended shortly after that. Not with a dramatic goodbye. Just with the kind of conclusion that happens when one person has said what they needed to say and the other has heard it and neither of them has anything left to add. What I did not know yet was what Jennifer did with the refusal. What she did with it in the 4 weeks between that Thursday phone call and the Tuesday morning she stood in my driveway. I learned it later, piece by piece, the way you learn things that happened while you were not watching, from the caseworker who came to my house the afternoon of the driveway call, a woman named Sandra Briggs who was 45 and professional and had the specific, measured manner of someone who has been doing this job long enough to understand that first impressions are data points and not conclusions. Sandra told me that a report had been received that morning alleging neglect and potential substance abuse. She said the report had included specific details: Haley's preschool schedule, our home address, Marcus's work hours, details that someone would only have from close familiarity with our lives. I asked Sandra if she could tell me who had made the report. She said she could not. I said I knew anyway. Sandra came inside. She interviewed me. She walked through the house. She asked about Haley's routines and her medical history and her preschool attendance and our family structure. She asked about alcohol in the home, which we had, wine on a shelf in the kitchen the way most households had wine on a shelf in the kitchen, and she noted it and moved on. She spent 2 hours in our house, and she spoke to Haley briefly, asking the child simple questions in the gentle, practiced way of someone who knows how to talk to a 4-year-old and how to hear what a 4-year-old is actually saying. Before she left, Sandra told me the report would be assessed and that someone would be in touch within the standard time frame. She gave me her card. She said, "Mrs. Mercer, in my professional assessment, this home presents no indicators of the concerns reported." She said it in the careful, neutral language of a professional who cannot tell me everything she is thinking, but who has decided I deserve to know that much. After she left, I sat at my kitchen table for a long time. Haley was at preschool. The house was quiet. The April afternoon was doing what Tennessee April does, warm and slightly unsettled, the light moving in the way it moves when the weather is deciding something. I thought about my sister standing in my driveway. I thought about the specific stillness of her back as she stood there with her phone pressed to her ear. I thought about Tyler and Mia. I need you to understand something. What I did next was not revenge. I want to be very precise about that because the word revenge implies a decision made in anger, and what I made was a decision made in clarity. I called Sandra Briggs the following morning. I said I had information relevant to the welfare of 2 children and I wanted to report it. I gave Sandra the names. I gave her the address in Chattanooga. I told her what I knew about Paul's drinking, which was not rumor or impression, but specific and documented. Incidents Jennifer had described to me in detail over years of phone calls that I had listened to with growing concern and that I had never reported because I had believed Jennifer was managing it and that it was not my place to intervene in a situation she had not asked me to intervene in. I had changed my mind about that. I told Sandra about the 3 occasions Jennifer had described to me in the past year where Paul had driven the children somewhere while he had been drinking. I told her about the night 6 months ago when Jennifer had called me at 11:30 and asked what she should do because Paul was passed out on the kitchen floor and Tyler had seen him. I told her about the financial situation, not as gossip, but as context for what the children's daily environment looked like. The stress and the instability and the way children absorb the atmosphere of a household even when the adults inside it believe they are being shielded. Sandra listened to everything. She asked questions. She thanked me. 31 days after my sister stood in my driveway on her phone, a Chattanooga family court judge signed an emergency custody order. Paul's blood alcohol level at the time of the home visit was documented in the court record. Tyler had told the caseworker things that Tyler should never have had to tell anyone. The children were placed in emergency foster care pending a full investigation and a determination of whether Jennifer, who had known about Paul's drinking and had not removed the children from the environment, had failed in her duty to protect them. Jennifer called me the night the order was signed. Her voice was the voice of someone whose world has collapsed in a direction she did not anticipate and who has not yet processed the full shape of the collapse. She said, "You did this." I said, "Jennifer, I need you to listen to me." She said, "You called CPS on me." I said, "You called CPS on me first." From my driveway. And then I thought about Tyler and Mia and I made a decision that I would have made a year ago if I had been willing to make it then. She said she was going to lose her children. I said I hoped she was not. I said I hoped what happened next was that she got Tyler and Mia back and that the situation with Paul was addressed in a way that made their home actually safe. I said that was the outcome I had reported for, not this one. She did not respond to that. She was crying in the way of someone who has been overtaken by something too large to manage and who has not yet found the bottom of it. I said, "Jennifer, get a lawyer. Tonight." She got a lawyer. The custody case moved through the Chattanooga family court over the following 4 months. Paul entered a treatment program, which was the first time in 11 years of marriage that the drinking had been named and addressed as the thing it was rather than managed as the thing Jennifer needed it to appear to be. Jennifer cooperated with everything the court required. She attended every hearing and every parent-child visit and every meeting with the caseworker assigned to her children. She did what was asked, and she did it consistently, and she did it in the specific, focused way of someone who has finally understood what is actually at stake. Tyler and Mia came home 7 months after the emergency order. Paul was in outpatient treatment and subject to random testing as a condition of the family reunification plan. The family court judge noted in her order that the investigation had revealed a situation that had been building for years, and that the intervention, while painful, had been necessary. Jennifer and I did not speak for 6 months after her call on the night the order was signed. The first call came from her on a Sunday in November, and she did not begin with an apology, and she did not begin with an accusation. She said, "Tyler asked about you." I said, "What did you tell him?" She said she had told him that I loved him and that things between adults were complicated sometimes and that she hoped I would come visit when everything was settled. I asked her if that was still something she wanted. She said yes. We talked for 40 minutes. Not about CPS or the driveway or the $5,000 or Paul or the court order. About Tyler's new interest in baseball and Mia's first loose tooth and the specific, ordinary things that children produce that have nothing to do with anything except the fact of being alive and growing and needing to be told about. We talked the way sisters talk when they have both been through something that changed them and are finding their way back to each other through the things that were always true even when everything else was in question. I drove to Chattanooga in December. Tyler was at a baseball clinic. Mia showed me the gap where her tooth had been. Jennifer made coffee in her kitchen, and we sat at the table the way we had sat at tables our whole lives, and we did not say the hard things because the hard things had been said in court documents and caseworker reports and a phone call on a November night that had started with Tyler's name. Some things do not need to be said again. Some things just need to be survived. We survived. That was the beginning of the rest of it.